This is John Howell Essential Cuts, your daily rundown of the best from today's show on 890 WLS.
So we saw what happened. The fire was on August 8th, and apparently it moved at a mile a minute. I mean, they had nowhere to go. It came from all different directions, and it's over 100 people dead, with, I think, hundreds still missing. Our friend Alex Stone, ABC News correspondent, has been in Maui. He was one of the few to see firsthand the devastation, and he joins us now live from Hawaii. Alex, kind of give us your thoughts on how devastating this fire was and where we are in the recovery efforts.
Hey there, John. So I'm in Lahaina right now, and for FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Team members in their blue uniforms, their helmets, cadaver dogs, they've been at work here moving through the gutted, burned-out buildings. We were watching a little while ago as what looked like members of the military came in to move some power lines that were hanging low so the FEMA teams could get in. It is slow moving through these burned-out buildings, and that's why at last count they've only gotten through about a third of the buildings, a little over a third now, with quite a bit left to go, that as they look for the human remains and the dogs triggering on the smallest amount of evidence that somebody was in there, and then they have to begin sifting through and figure out what the dog was triggering on. So they've got more dogs heading this way, at 10 more canine teams. They've got 30 here right now. And then just on the edge of the burns.
Uh-oh. Drop off or still?
He still appears to be connected, but we are not receiving audio.
Alex, can you hear me? I hate to hang up on him.
No, they're very suspicious. What's that?
Alex, you dumped on us for about 15 or 20 seconds. Why don't you just go back a little ways and go ahead?
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully you'll be able to hear me. As you can imagine, cell service is iffy here right now as they're on mobile towers that have been set up. What I was saying is the neighborhoods here, they have set up their own police-style checkpoints that they've now got to find out who you are coming into their neighborhoods. They don't want tourists. They've got hand-painted signs saying no tourists allowed. They want to know. They're very suspicious if you're a reporter or you're a member of FEMA. They don't want the tourists. This 11-year-old boy, Hanali, he told me what he does at night right now in his neighborhood.
Well, at nighttime, I stay up and security the road. And we do, like, looter runs. You know what a looter is?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do that.
Yeah, so he goes on patrol at nighttime at 11 years old in his neighborhood looking for any looters in there, but he says... It's bad that this happened, but at least we're all together. We're helping the community out together. They've got a long road, John, still ahead here to get back on their feet. The recovery is not even beginning. Everything is just kind of frozen right now while FEMA goes through the buildings, and they got a lot of work left to do.
Alex, thanks much. I know you're short of time. We'll talk to you again, I'm sure.
You got it. Sounds good. Thanks, John.
Take care. Alex Stone, ABC News in Maui, joining us here at WLS.
You're listening to John Howell Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
The feds are either nearing the end or done presenting their perjury case against ex-top aide to Mike Madigan, Mr. Mapes. They are playing a lot of secret FBI recordings. Here is Mr. McClain and Mapes discussing Bob Rita on a phone call. Let's listen to that first, and then we'll get to some of his testimony.
Did you talk to Rita this week?
I talked to him this week, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Something I should know?
No, he sent me a text while I was gone. I don't know if we could talk, and I couldn't talk that day. And so he hasn't replied to my next one. I didn't know whether he replies to text all the time or he's, too busy. He's pretty busy.
He's probably one of the slowest return call guys or return text guys I've ever met. He's even slower than me.
I don't think you're slow. You're busy.
So, Bob Rita, during the interview with the feds, which was also recorded, there seems to be a bit of a discrepancy.
Do you know whether or not Mr. McClain knew Bob Rita at all?
Oh, I'm sure he did. He was a member of the House for 15 or 20 years.
Okay. And were you aware of any contact between Mr. McClain and Mr. Rita, again, with the same time frame, which is to say the time frame after Mr. McClain retired as a lobbyist? So the 2017, 2018, 2019 time frame, are you aware of any contact between Mr. McClain and Mr. Rita from any source of information?
I don't recall any at all. Any dial-up.
Oopsie. I think that's maybe where he went in the soup. Let's get some context here. Jon Seidel covers the federal court for your Chicago Sun-Times. John, thanks for your time. I know you're very busy. What's the status now? Have the feds presented their case entirely, or do they come back next week?
Very close to being done. They're going to come back tomorrow morning.
Oh.
And the judge told the jury as they left today that they can expect to be heading home around lunchtime tomorrow. It seems that we have just a little bit more testimony from an FBI agent who monitored the wiretap that captured some of those calls you just played on Michael McClain's phone. It's not clear if they're done after that testimony, but we're very, very close. We have seen the bulk of this case.
What did Lou Lang bring to the case this week?
Well, Lou Lang came in and kind of revisited his testimony from Michael McClain's trial earlier this year. So the episode with Lou Lang, there had been harassment allegations against Lou Lang in the middle of 2018, and then apparently another allegation was kind of percolating up around November 2018. Madigan told Michael McClain that I don't see how Lang continues on, and he had Michael McClain call Lou Lang, who had been in the General Assembly for a very long time, and told him it was time to go. So the reason that matters here is because one of the allegations in Mapes' indictment is that he lied about knowing about whether or not McClain had any communication with Lou Lang in 2018. And today, after Lou Lang, I believe it was after Lou Lang left the stand today, we started to hear some calls that we hadn't heard before, in which McClain tells Mapes that he's on an assignment to deal with Lou Lang. And not only does McClain tell Mapes about that, but Mapes seems to be just checking back in and finding out if he's had this difficult conversation with Lou Lang yet. And at one point, Mapes asked, they hadn't had that call yet, and Mapes asked McClain if he's going to have his big boy pants on while he's talking to Lang. So,
I love these. I must compliment you on the way that you and the Sun-Times put these articles together, because you include the embedded audio right in the article. So when I'm reading your setup to the tape, I can just click on the link and I can listen to the wiretap portion that you're describing.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we try to get as much of that out as we can.
So Mapes is on trial. Tim Mapes is on trial for perjury and attempted obstruction of justice. Now, when the defense takes the stand, they're going to make much of how many questions he was asked, and apparently he didn't tell the truth on, they would say, under a dozen answers of hundreds of questions. Are they going to bring in an expert in human memory?
They've suggested as much. We don't really know, but yes, there was some back and forth before the trial began about whether or not this expert in human memory should be allowed in. I believe Judge Ness is going to let this person in, so that's probably somebody that we will see. There was also back and forth about the prosecutor. Again, I think listeners may have just heard the voice of Assistant U.S. Attorney Amber Bachu questioning Mr. Mapes in the grand jury. Mapes' attorneys want to put that prosecutor on the stand because he was the one who asked the questions that have put Mapes on trial for perjury now. The government tried to quash that subpoena, and Judge Ness said no, he's going to allow it. Again, we have to wait and see if he's actually called. But
so one of the prosecutors, is he sitting there as part of the prosecutorial team now? So he's going to take the stand as a defense witness?
Not at the government table. He's not, but he is one of the lead prosecutors in the overall investigation. I'm not sure if he's actually shown. So first of all, because he was on the witness list, and for the first week of the trial, he was not allowed to participate in the trial at all. He was excluded, which is traditional for witnesses, so they're not listening to what other people are saying. But Judge Ness did give permission for the prosecutor, for Mr. Bachu, to listen in. I believe he's been listening at times in an overflow room in the courtroom. So the jury hasn't seen him, to the best of my knowledge. But he is part of the team, and he might be called to testify.
Pardon my ignorance, but have you seen that done before?
I can't think of a time off the top of my head when I've seen a prosecutor who participated in the investigation called to testify in the trial. It's very unusual.
Jon Seidel is here. He covers the federal courts for the Chicago Sun-Times. Will Mapes take the stand in his own defense?
We don't know. I think the thinking is that he testified under oath once and it got him here. So it seems unlikely that it'll happen again. But look, I mean, his defense attorney told the judge the other day that that's still a question they're not ready to answer. So we just have to wait and see.
Boy, he must rue the day when he decided, if in fact he did decide to be a little slippery with some of his answers, because he was in the free and clear, wasn't he?
He was. He had an immunity. Chief Judge Pallmeyer had issued an immunity order. The only way his testimony could have been used against him in a prosecution is if he lied. And here we are. And
the assignment that McClain is referencing on the wiretap that I played earlier this week, that is in regards to the property in Chinatown, and that's part of the Madigan trial next April, correct?
Correct. That's another thing that McClain labeled as an assignment from Madigan in these wiretaps. And yes, there was this goes way back, and it's a long story, but yes, and back to 2014, there was discussion of this property in Chinatown that's owned by the state that developers wanted to put their hands on. Danny Solis, the cooperating former alderman, he was involved in those conversations. We heard his name come up actually a few times in this trial, including today when Nancy Kinney, who was once chief of staff to Judy Bartopinka, took the stand. Is kind of like a circuitous route to explain how Mapes is involved. But I think the point here is they're trying to get at whether Mapes was aware of things that were going on in Madigan World in 2018.
Plus, there's an email involved here that was written by McClain that Mapes was a recipient of, and it went out to a number of people, where essentially this is when Madigan's office is under attack because the allegations, which are substantiated as sexual improprieties, what have you. It was time to take the gloves off, stop being nice, and throw some red meat to the press so that they'd be distracted away from Madigan. Can you kind of elaborate on that angle to this case as well?
Sure, yeah. This was about a week after some of those sexual harassment allegations that you mentioned first came up. And people, and this was at the height of the Me Too movement, people were very concerned. We again heard today from a former Madigan aide talking about nationally, people were being forced out of their jobs, and they were concerned that the same thing was going to happen to Madigan. They were in crisis control, and McClain did send this email saying that he was done with this nicey stuff, and he was basically trying to get Madigan's team to pitch salacious, scandalous stories about open marriages and whatnot in Springfield to overworked and underpaid news reporters. He said that we've got to, play by the other team's rules because we can't lose Madigan. He said we can't lose him in writing about Madigan. We can't give Illinois to these guys.
And so that's when Quinn had to go, correct?
Right. That involved the allegations against Quinn and Elena Hampton. And I should say that, we've heard from former Madigan aide Will Cousineau. Today we heard from Craig Willard. They did not follow McClain's advice. But Mapes was certainly, aware of that. And again, I think the point is this was a major event in 2018, and Mapes knew that McClain was involved in this. And then Mapes told the grand jury that he was not aware of McClain's dealings with Madigan that year. So that's, again, how it circles back. But we're hearing a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, so in saying I'm not aware, those are one of the 7 alleged lies that he told the feds.
Right, and what the feds are saying is that these are not not nitpicky, minor detail things that anyone would have forgotten about. This was a major event in Tim Mapes' world in 2018, along with all these other people who worked for Madigan. It's very hard to just kind of let that slip from your memory.
Boy, I guess. I mean, it's what twisted webs we weave. There's 3 or 4 different sort of trials that all seem to intersect, and it all began with the alderman wearing his wire, or not the alderman. He came up in the trial again today.
Well, there's a debate.
Danny Solis. Yeah, Danny Solis. Yeah, the alderman.
And actually, if you take it all the way back to 2014 when this began, it was a guy helping a hotel developer who actually wore a wire on Madigan and Solis. Then they flipped Solis, and on and on and on. So yeah, it goes way back.
So he's like ground zero. He's patient zero for all these scandals, isn't he?
For Danny Solis, he's right in the middle of a lot of them. Not so much the ComEd one. The main cooperator was Fidel Marquez, but Danny Solis is, I think patient zero is well, usually the Feds call them Alderman A.
You know, the other thing I like about the way you present this in the Sun-Times, and it's kind of, you can get sucked down the rabbit hole because you link to all those previous articles, and I was going through the Danny Solis stuff earlier today, and this big ad for Viagra came up for some reason.
I can't imagine how that happened.
I think there's an algorithm out there because that is mentioned in those early articles as some of the freebies, apparently. I don't even know if this is ever corroborated, but all of a sudden I'm clicking through to these articles about Danny Solis in the Sun-Times from, at this point, years ago, and Viagra ads are popping up. No pun intended.
That was one of the alleged benefits that Solis was getting from people was little blue pills.
Well, as I always say, it seems at the conclusion of all our conversations, it certainly keeps you in business.
Very busy over here.
So no court tomorrow? Oh, no, you said they're coming back tomorrow morning.
We should have court at least in the morning tomorrow, yes.
And then back at it Monday, maybe the defense starts then?
The defense has said they're expecting to start their case on Monday.
Jon Seidel, thank you very much. We'll read more over the weekend in the Chicago Sun-Times. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks so much. Take care.
This is John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me just be clear here. We are not broadcasting live from the BMW Championship. That's different. It's at Olympia Fields Country Club in Olympia, Illinois. However, one of our colleagues, Annie Krall from the news department, happens to be live from nearby the BMW Championship, not offering play-by-play, but just kind of a general flavor of this PGA tournament, which is happening in South Suburban Chicagoland. Annie is a 3 handicap. Annie, how are you?
Oh, John, I'm fabulous. How are you doing today?
Well, hanging in and hanging on. Now, without giving us the absolute latest, who do you like today? Who's looking good to your eye?
Well, it's going to be one and the same, John, because the guy who I liked at the start of this morning is the guy that pretty much everyone likes by the end of the day. It's Matt Fitzpatrick. It is Matt Fitzpatrick around the entire course. For those of our listeners who don't know, I am very, very lucky, but Matt Fitzpatrick is a Northwestern former golfer. I myself am a Northwestern alum. I teach at Northwestern as well. So I had my eye on him, John, pretty early on of just having that local Northwestern angle. Again, such a cool backstory in terms of what Matt Fitzpatrick has been able to do with his golf game. And I'll tell you what, John, he's on top of the round right now. He came in with a 66, and he's tied for first.
So did he attend Northwestern when you did?
No, I wish. That would have been a very fun crossover. I probably would have bent his ear in class more than once. But he was at Northwestern in the fall of about 2013 and then left in about January of 2014 and ended up starting to go play amateur, played pro. Here's the thing, John. If I had Matt Fitzpatrick's golf game, I wouldn't have gone Northwestern for too much longer either.
So is he now he's probably not the first Northwestern grad to have success on the PGA Tour, obviously. PGA Tour goes back for 100 years. But that being said, Luke Donald also?
Luke Donald, also an alum. Again, that's someone who is world number one for many, many years. Luke Donald didn't make the cut. I believe he's probably closer to the 180 mark in terms of FedEx Cup's points ranking. But Luke Donald has always been a proud Wildcat. We're very lucky to have him in the ranks as well. Yeah,
he was number one during the Phil Tiger era, too.
Absolutely. Exactly. Even something else to kind of put a feather in your cap, if you will, John. You're right.
I think he used to live in Lake Forest. I used to drive by his house. Very impressive house.
Did you roll the window down and yell things, John? Or
no, I didn't. I was not into golf back in those days. But
you didn't fangirl then.
He was a member of and used to practice, I think, at Conway Farms, and the members would just leave him alone when he was out there working on his game.
Here's the thing, 2 incredible British golfers. We are very lucky to have them also wear purple every once in a while.
So, I don't know. There's the top 50 players are in this for the FedEx Cup playoff. Yes, they do this again another time before the championship. But is this a cut tournament, or do all 50 play all 4 days?
Fabulous question, John. If you don't mind, I will do a little bit of a breakdown, and I will try and explain it in as quick of a term as I can. Golf playoffs are actually quite interesting. It's not necessarily, we beat this team, we make it to the divisional playoff, we beat that team, we get to go to the Super Bowl. Golf is a little bit more niche. Again, it's individual players. So in terms of the cuts that you're talking about or you're asking about, the important ones is that we're in the second leg of the golf playoffs. FedEx Cup point rankings put the top 70 players into the playoffs. So you're playing in these tournaments all year long. You're trying to get points. You're trying to make that top 70. That was actually probably about last week was the first round of playoffs, and that was the St. Jude's Championship. Top 70, 20 guys cut, and they make it to the top 50 here that you just pointed out at the BMW Championship here in Chicago. So the top 50 in the world are right now in Chicago. You've got Ricky Fowler, Jason Day, Tommy Fleetwood. Obviously, of course, Jon Rahm is the number one player in the world, the incredible Spanish player. He's been doing a heck of a job out here. Fun fact for you, John, or for any of our listeners who might know, Jon Rahm actually won the BMW Championship in 2020, which is the last time it was here. So top 50 again here in Chicago right now, and then it's the top 30 that go to the Tour Championship. So next week it's going to be in Georgia. That's going to be one heck of a tournament. That's kind of what's coming up the pipe next week, and everyone's hoping to punch their ticket for the top 30.
So I watched that. That was back in 2020 on TV. Mm-hmm. That was COVID, of course, so there was no spectators. And that's when Dustin Johnson in that playoff hit that amazing putt, only to have Jon Rahm about a minute later nail his putt to win.
Somehow do one even more amazing.
Yeah. That was really something. And have you played that North Course at Olympia Fields?
I have not, but I'm telling you, John, just walking around, seeing everything that we have, it is not a course that I would approach lightly. Let's just say that.
Well, you're a great player. I mean, it was, I was able to go out there because my buddy's nephew is a member. And that would be a great club to join because there's so much for families to do, and it's not a stuffy club. I think that it's relatively easy to become a member there, but it's just so far away from where I live. But I really like Olympia Fields. But it was a disastrous round for me. But I knew it was going to be a disastrous round. But somebody with a 3 handicap like you would be able to. You'd be able to challenge that course pretty well.
John, you give me so many compliments, and if I didn't have to be on here with you, I would be delighted to be on here with you. Let's go with that. The rough is probably what I would say would even take my single-digit handicap and kind of turn it for a loop. It's just so thick. And the fact, too, John, and I don't think we've touched on this yet, is it was a downpour this morning. 2-hour rain delay. Tee times are supposed to be probably around 8 o'clock, depending on who you are. First tee time wasn't until 10:30 this morning. These guys were waiting around in torrential rain, making this course that you're already pointing out, right, is a tough enough course, confusing, some creative shots. You have to really hit it straight as often as you can. And you're playing in wet grass? No, thank you.
How tough is it to become a spectator there? Do they have the infrastructure set up so you can take the train right there and literally walk over, or is it going to take some remote parking and buses? How easy does that look for our listeners who may want to attend?
I would say for anyone who wants to come, you're spot on, John. It's going to be that Metro stop. I could probably throw a rock from the Metro stop to where the clubhouse is. It drops you right off. You could obviously catch it from downtown, or if you have to connect into downtown and then come through. Incredible setup for that. In terms of the ride shares, you do have to be dropped off in a similar area from where the Metro is. If you want to park, you can go into certain parking lots, and then you'll be shuttled in. I would say for anyone who's thinking about it, interested in golf, just starting out with the sport, whatever it may be, these guys are really laying it out on the line. I've been saying this all day to a lot of my colleagues here in the media center. It is an aggressive field. The guys are being very strategic. You're going to brush shoulders with some of the best in the world right now. I was out on the putting green. I was out on the driving range, and you're, 3, 4, 5 feet from Tony Finau, Ricky Fowler, Jason Day, just absolute icons. It is very much worth it, especially if you have a family. Bring your family out here. It's also part of the Evans Scholar Foundation. A lot of these benefits go towards college tuition for a lot of these caddies who are benefiting from the BMW Championship. It's a family affair. If you're a golf fan, it's a huge golfing opportunity. I would definitely say it's something that's worthwhile to do this weekend.
Were you an Evans Scholar?
I was not. I never caddied in my life, but I had a lot of friends at Northwestern who were Evans Scholars. I actually lived right next door to the Evans Scholar House. I believe in that organization so much. For anyone who doesn't know, the Evans Scholar Program gives caddies full tuition, room and board, and it's based on financial aid. It's based on grades, letter of recommendation. There's a huge, massive criteria process, and there's probably over 1,000 caddies who get this tuition and get to enjoy it to go to college. So I'm a huge fan of it, even though I wasn't particularly part of it myself.
2 more questions.
I've got all day, John, so whatever you need.
2 more questions. Can you join us again just after the 5:30 news for a final update from today's round?
Twist my arm. I'll do it.
And secondly, have you sent an audition tape to the Golf Channel?
I will neither confirm nor deny John Howell if I've had conversations with the Golf Channel.
Got you. All right, well, thank you, Annie. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you in a couple hours.
Thank you, John. Looking forward to it.
Take care.
Bye.
Annie Krall is a member of our news team. She is out in Olympia Fields, in Olympia, at Olympia Fields Country Club, and partaking of the BMW Championship. Let me just be clear, she is not doing any sort of play-by-play. She is there just to get the basic temperature and feel of the BMW Championship, and we thank them for the access. Annie, what's the latest? What does day one look like to you?
Well, feel is the right word, John, because there are a lot of feelings out here. We're all kind of watching what's coming in initially. I said earlier with you, we were talking about Matt Fitzpatrick, Northwestern former golfer. He played back in 2013. News story right now, Rory McIlroy. Rory McIlroy coming in 5 under with a 65. That's one stroke ahead of course, Matt Fitzpatrick, who came in with a 66. And Rory McIlroy, again, very well-known name, incredible golfer. I'm a huge fan of his, again, from way back when he came on the scene, probably, gosh, at this point, 10, 15 years ago. He's sharing the lead right now with Brian Harman. And Brian Harman, a little bit of a quieter player. Exactly. You might know him, you might not know him, but it's Rory McIlroy and it's Brian at the top of the leaderboard, tied for first, and then it's Matt Fitzpatrick. So
well, didn't Harman win
right now?
Harman won the Open going
Absolutely.
away, didn't he? Yeah.
Yes. So Harman is an incredible player. He's coming in. I've been watching a lot of his strokes. They're very solid. They're very smooth. What I'm seeing right now, John, is the people who are scoring well, the people who are coming in with the low 65, the low 66s, they're just being consistent. Rory McIlroy didn't have a single bogey this entire round. That's pretty unheard of. No bogeys, 5 birdies, and all pars. So what's really making this course sing is just making those pars and dropping a couple birdie putts.
Annie, you've watched Rory a lot. So have I. So has Kim. But he either is really hot on the opening day of any tourney or really cold on the opening day of any tourney. But then if he's hot, like today, tomorrow, Saturday, he tends to have trouble on Sunday. Do you see that trend with Rory as well?
I would love him to keep up his momentum. You're spot on, John. I would love him to keep going, having this hot putter. What I'm loving from Rory right now is he is just saving after saving after saving. On 17, we were watching him, and he's threading the needle out of the woods, just barely scraping the bark on a tree when he gets a tee shot into the woods. You could almost hear it whistle past a tree. And then not only does he get it probably maybe say 10 feet past the hole off the green on the chipping area, he chips in for a birdie after shooting your tee shot into the woods. I mean, I don't do that very often. I don't think most of us do that very often. But I would love to see him have this kind of, let's not even say luck, this kind of skill on Sunday.
WLS's Annie Krall is here. By the way, she's a 3 handicap. She is live at the BMW Championship. Kim Gordon?
Well, we dream about that, Annie. But anyway, there are no LIV players at this tournament. What's the feel? What are you hearing about LIV? And I know they're coming to Sugar Grove soon.
Absolutely no. And Kim, that's such a good question. Again, if anyone's been following golf news for the past, I don't know, let's say a couple months, you know that the saga has always been LIV versus PGA. Again, there's been a merger. There's been a little bit more kumbaya, if you will, but depending on if you're a LIV player, if you're a PGA player, again, there's still a lot of strife between the players and how everything went down. But in terms of pace of play and who you get to play with and who you're going to see on these rounds, those LIV players will be coming to Sugar Grove, like you just said, in about a month or so. And it's interesting, none of them are here. I'm walking around Olympia Fields. You don't see Phil Mickelson. You don't see Brooks Koepka. Incredible players who are still at the top of their game. And again, we have the top 50 players here in the FedEx Cup's rankings, the PGA, and they're just not around. It's a little bit eerie, but again, there's enough people on the roster, whether that's Ricky Fowler, John Rahm, Jason Day, to kind of keep an eye on everybody. But you're not wrong. There is still a little bit of a divide when it comes to LIV versus PGA.
Is Rahm still out?
Rahm is still out. If I'm going to probably check a TV really quickly.
He's on 13.
He's on 13. He's through 13. I believe he's on 14. So he is still out. Again, he's the number 1 ranked player in the FedEx Cup right now. He's got the most points. I wouldn't necessarily say he was the favored one coming in. I would almost make the argument that Rory was the favored player coming into the BMW Championship. Again, he does really well on courses like this. But John Rahm is still out there. He's probably going to come in with a low score. I would probably put him maybe in the top 10-ish. But there's kind of a divide between first top place, third, and then everyone's kind of tied for 7th or 11th in the current rankings right now.
And so, Annie, who are most of the people following? Who are the hot golfers that everybody wants to trail today?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, you have people walking around, and it was funny. I was on the putting greens. I was on the driving range, and you just hear these little kids go, oh, is that Scotty Scheffler? Oh, is that Tony Finau? And they just know these guys because they've been watching them for so long, and it's so precious to just hear those little gasps, or even from adult men who are like, buddy, wait. Is that Rory? Oh, my God, it's Rory. And you are just, I think golf is a great equalizer. If you are a fan, you're a fan, period. And I think to have some of those players out here walking past you, I was making a joke actually to one of my friends in the media center that Matt Fitzpatrick just walked past me. And again, he's not a particularly tall guy, maybe 5'10", 6 feet if I check the stats. Walked past me, Gatorade in hand, looking at his phone. These guys are just, I don't want to say unassuming, but they're very humble and they're very quiet, and they go about their games, they go about their routines, and then you're like, oh, you're the top 10 player in the world. Oh, you're on the top of the leaderboard right now. And that's kind of what's beautiful about having this kind of interaction at Olympia Fields, is that you just get this kind of unbelievable access to players that's very different than a basketball or a football game where you're, depending on what row you're in, that's the best that you're going to get to a player.
Yeah. Annie, with that Double Dallas Press Pass provided by the PGA, are you able to get into that mammoth locker room with the alleys and the card tables and the little bars set up at Olympia Fields?
I haven't been asking about the locker room, John. I don't know if that's particularly my place at the moment, but most of the media members aren't going into the locker room, so I'm not particularly worried about that. I have not been in the locker room, but if you have, I am all ears about what that guy looks like.
Well, it's huge, and these little fiefdoms, these guys that are members out there, they get together with their buddies, and they essentially take over one alleyway in this huge locker room at Olympia Fields, and it's theirs in perpetuity, and they sit around all day long and play cards, and maybe play a round of golf, maybe not. It's really a unique environment there.
It sounds like a Chicago modern-day Roman bath, if you will. Of let me just enjoy my day.
Yeah, that's an image I can't get out of my head. Okay, sure, yeah. Well, are you going to stay for, a couple more hours? Are you going to go home, or what's the deal? Are you going to join us tomorrow?
I will certainly be here tomorrow, John. There's way too much fun to be had. Another round of golf will be on Friday, and I think for all of our listeners, keep in mind there are still 72 holes of golf. Thursday was the first day today. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, of course, we'll find out who wins. I'll stick around. This place is absolutely gorgeous. So if anyone feels like coming out and exploring Olympia Fields, seeing the BMW Championship, if you have or haven't before, I would definitely highly recommend.
Thank you, Annie. Much appreciated.
Of course. Thanks, John. Thanks,
Take
Kim.
care. I should mention that all proceeds from the BMW Championship benefit the nationally acclaimed Evans Scholarship Foundation. And since 2007, the BMW Championship has contributed more than $44.5 million to the foundation's mission of sending deserving youth caddies to college.
You're listening to John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Let's start with Shia Kapos. She is a reporter for Politico.com, also author of Politico's Illinois Playbook, which will flow right to your inbox every morning at about 7:30. It is a great political one-sheet, what's going on in the city and the state. You should sign up for it. But as she wrote, the state's top Democrats gave a glimpse yesterday of their political strategy for the 24 campaign. The focus will be on abortion rights and Donald Trump. Pritzker gave a fiery speech. He praised Democrats for building a blue wave that swept away the red wall of Uihleins, Griffins, Rauner, and Trump. Let's start there with Shia Kapos, who has pulled off, I understand, in Lincoln, Illinois, to safely talk to us here on Double Dls. Shia, thank you very much. Who returned fire for the GOP today?
Hi there. Everybody did. You had Richard Porter, who's a national committee man. You had Tony McCombie, who's the GOP House leader. You had Don Tracy, who's the GOP chairman in Illinois. And you had Darren LaHood. He didn't attack Pritzker per se, but he did really try to rally. He did a good job rallying the Republicans during their fair day today.
Do the Democrats or the Republicans generally have a better crowd each year?
Well, we're in Illinois, and there are, Democrats dominate elected office. So, of course, they have more people at the fair. I thought today's fair for Republicans, they had a really good turnout considering it's an off-election year coming up and considering they're down in elected seats. They had a good turnout. What was interesting, I thought, was that of the people at the fair, you didn't see the only presidential signs you saw were for Donald Trump. I only saw one hat that said DeSantis on it. The rest was Trump. To me, it means that the other candidates, they're just trying to get through those early primaries, and Trump is confident enough that he thinks he'll get all the way through to be able to compete in Illinois. So that was interesting.
So, Shia Kapos, obviously the Democrats are going to make 24 all about Donald Trump. They'd love for him to be the nominee. Do you get the sense that the Republicans that you've talked to would prefer not to discuss Donald Trump that much and prefer to focus on, obviously, Joe Biden or maybe some other initiatives?
Yes, they do not want to talk about Donald Trump. They want to talk about Hunter Biden. And in Illinois, they want to talk about the trial that's going on right now, for example, related to Michael Madigan's associates. That is what really dominated the Republicans' conversations today. So they're going to talk about that. They're not going to talk about Donald Trump. They were very, careful to talk about him because they just don't know what's going to happen. They know he has a big following here in Illinois among Republicans. They're kind of tiptoeing around that, I would say.
I noticed in your column this morning, the Illinois Playbook, that you rated the state fair tents, the political tents. Yes. I noticed you thought there was a couple very impressive ones for the Democrats yesterday. I'd like you to touch on those. And did the Republicans offer up any really compelling tents today?
No, they only had one tent. They have the one Republican Party tent, and it's sparsely, populated, not as much literature. They just have that one big sign that talks about Democrats being, criminals, basically. In Illinois, it's kind of easy to do that, because there have been a lot of Democrats who have gone to jail over the years, so it's easy for them to poke at Democrats for that. Did
you see Jim Durkin by chance today, or is he completely off the grid as far as this Republican Party now?
I did not see him there today. I can't say if he's off the grid or not. I mean, I know he's not running. He hasn't been at events that I've seen him at, but he's somebody that people still admire, I think, in the mainstream part of the Republican Party. And there have been lieutenants of his that are carrying over his ideas. So, he's there in spirit if he wasn't there in person.
Yes, I admire his courage nowadays. Jim Durkin, I'm a fan of his. What's your favorite fried food at the state fair? Have you decided, Shia?
Well, I always get corn dogs, and even though I know everybody says Vos is the best, which they are very good, I tried another one yesterday, and it was just fine, too. So I love the corn dogs. I'm a big corn dog person. And then I'm a little late driving home today because I had to stop and get the fried Oreos. So we'll have those for dinner tonight.
Have you tried the deep-fried peanut butter and jelly?
I have not tried that. I wanted to try the deep-fried pickles. That sounded interesting to me.
How about the deep-fried key lime pie?
I did not try that, but I talked to the Sun-Times reporter, Mitchell Armentrout, who did try it, and he liked it. He said it was really interesting. It's kind of cool in the middle and, warm on the outside. But I don't know if you read his story, he tried everything that was fried yesterday, and so he said he didn't want to eat for a whole day.
Yes.
It was hard for him to eat last night because he ate so much during the fair.
I did read his column because I found it in your column.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on behalf of all radio talk show hosts and reporters and journalists in Chicago, thank you. You must get up at 2:30 in the morning to put this together so it's in our inboxes at 7:30.
I stay up really late, and I do get up early. Not quite 2:30, but I do get up early.
Well, Shia, I appreciate your work. Thanks so much, and have a safe drive home. Do you have a special plate provided to you by Politico.com like our legislators so you can drive 90 miles an hour?
Oh, no, I wish. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Those single-digit Illinois plates, the state police tend to ignore those, don't they?
They turned the other way, I guess.
Drive safely, Shia Kapos. Read more tomorrow. Illinois Playbook, Politico.com. Thanks
so much, Sean.
John Howell, Essential Cuts. Check back every weekday for another episode of John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.